Welcome to another episode of To The Point. Today I'm joined by Wendy Whittaker-Large, the HMO queen, let's say. Certainly got experience in that field, that's for sure. So for Wendy and the listeners that haven't tuned into To The Point, in essence, I ask a question and you've got 3 minutes to answer that question. Okie doke. First question, if Wendy was to become Prime Minister, what is the first bit of legislation she would bring in?
I would actually be ripping up legislation, not making it, Scott, because I think there's too much of it already. So I would really like to see a lot of legislation removed, ripped up, burnt, got rid of. One of the things that, of course, MPs love to do, and of course, if I was PM, then I would have already been an MP and probably a minister. So I'd be very used to having to resist the call to create more laws and more legislation. And you probably have to develop a bit of a thick skin because there's always pressure, I think, on politicians to legislate against this or legislate for this or legislate, in order that this could happen. And I think we've got to be very careful because legislation is a double-edged sword. It can favour some sectors of society. It can help some areas of society, but there's always a trade-off. So whatever legislation you bring in, you have to be very, very mindful of what you're trading off to make this thing on your piece of legislation happen. Mm-hmm. So, for example, in the last 10 years, we've seen huge amounts of new legislation come in about housing, whether it's been about energy performance, which has kind of taken a back burner is not really quite the right analogy, is it? We don't talk about burning when we talk about energy, but you know what I mean. But we've also seen lots of regulation change around HMOs. So when I first started investing, you only needed a license if you had a large HMO. Now that was counted as being an HMO that was on 3 stories or more. So you could have a 9-bed HMO and it didn't need a license. But then in 2018, the new rules came in, which said that if it was a 5-bed HMO, it needs to be licensed. Mm-hmm. Now that's added to, these are not big properties. A 5-bed HMO is not a big HMO. Now you have to pay significant cost for that license. You have to pay for it to be renewed, of course. You're then taking time out to go and do the inspections with the local authority when they want to inspect, and they may identify things that they believe need to happen. And that's a whole heap of time and money that goes into that. Mm-hmm. So, and I'm not sure if, again, we looked at the statistics, whether the majority of 5-bed HMOs really cause so many problems to tenants that we have to now license them. Because licensing is really a way of the local authority keeping an eye on you to make sure that you're doing your job right as an HMO landlord, mm-hmm. what they consider to be right. And there are other rafts of pieces of legislation that they use, HMO management regulations, HHSRS, housing standards, building regs. All of these bits and pieces of legislation we have to adhere to. We have to know about them and we have to run them. But it adds a huge administrative burden to our businesses.
There we go, that's 3 minutes. Go on, round that off.
And I think puts costs up. And where do those costs eventually end up? In the hands of the tenant.
Yes, absolutely. Good stuff. Good answer. Next question. For someone that's just starting out in HMO, what's the best bit of advice you would give them?
That's a great question. I would say you have to educate yourself, but don't take too long in educating yourself and not take any action. Mm-hmm. It's better in my mind to start moving forward and doing some viewings and learning how to analyse a deal and learning how to analyse your market, which is critical, than just sit back and try and think that going on a property course is going to teach you everything. It's not. The only way to actually improve your income, to create subsidiary income from property, from HMOs, is to get out there and do it. And I speak to a lot of people who have done lots of courses, but they haven't taken any action. And that's the biggest failure. Because even though you might make some mistakes, in most instances in property, you can overcome those mistakes. Yes, you might lose a bit of money here, or you might make a mistake there. And you do see these awful stories of people who have made serious errors. And I've spoken to a number of people recently, actually, who've gone ahead and developed property, asked me to manage them. These are HMOs, and hadn't realised they were in Article 4 area. And I said, have you got planning permission? No. Okay. But again, it's not impossible. There's things you can do with that property. You could make it into a single buy to let. You could perhaps do serviced accommodation, or you could apply for retrospective planning. There's all sorts of answers to those problems. But what there isn't an answer to is somebody who's sitting at home watching a YouTube video and not getting out and doing something. So I think educate yourself, listen to people who are actually doing it, listen to people who've got knowledge and experience to help you. But ultimately, you have to take a step out into the big wide world and make something happen. And it is scary. You know, the thing is, you're stepping out of your comfort zone. So don't expect to think you're going to feel comfortable all the time, because you won't.
1 minute left.
I'd say the other thing is that you have to change your mindset. Mindset is really critical when you're an investor, because you're learning how to use money, and you're learning how to leverage money, and you're learning how bank finance works and how private finance works. And that is a whole other universe. And since I've known about it, I've really felt like I've learned so much about money. And that has massively helped me, because I have a very different attitude now to how I did even 10 years ago about money. Money likes flow. It's a form of energy. So the more that you can use it, the more that you can circulate it, the better. And don't get too attached to it. You know, don't think it's going to solve all your problems just having more money, because actually in many ways, sometimes it creates more problems. And that's why your mindset is so important.
Super. 9 seconds, but I'll let you off. Okay, so kind of leveling up from that last question, what makes a successful HMO investor?
I think a successful HMO investor is somebody who is able to evaluate a deal and understand, they have a goal in mind, but is also pretty flexible. You have to be a bit creative. And actually, that's one of the beauties of this industry, is there is no set pattern. There's no set recipe for a successful HMO. I've seen HMOs that are pretty bog standard, but they work incredibly well. I've seen other HMOs that are absolutely beautiful. They're nicer than my house, and I would love to live there. And they also work incredibly well. And I would say that knowing your market is really important to know where to pitch your HMO. Are you going for a student market? Are you going for a kind of workers HMO? Are you going for more of a high-end professional HMO? Where are you pitching your market? Because I think if you know your tenant type and you know what you're trying to achieve, not only does that give you specificity on, let's say, the refurb and the cost of that, but it also allows you to create a brand. And I actually think that this is one of the things that, some people love, and some people, I don't really want to do that. They feel less enamored to do that. But if you've got somebody within your team or somebody who can help you create a brand for your product, I think that hugely helps. It differentiates you from other people. It also enables you to create a kind of funnel. So when tenants are looking at your website or looking at your product, it might be that one of them doesn't quite float their boat, but another one does. And because they know you're speaking to them and you know what they want and what they need, they will come to you and they will find your rooms, your product as meeting their needs. And ultimately, that's what is the sign of a good business, is where you create a product that finds a space in the marketplace that people are prepared to pay for. So I would say that, creating that brand is almost key to be able to scale up and create a really good HMO business.
Great answer. So following on from that then, so in terms of identifying that demographic then, what kind of goes into that, if you can answer that in 45 seconds?
Well, I always advise people to really drill down into spare room. At the moment, that is the only site that we have that actually will give you that data. And you can really be clever with spare room. If you check out my YouTube video, you'll see I've done a couple of videos about it. But there's lots of ways of finding out that information. At the age of your tenant, their budget, where they're looking to live, what kind of person they are, what their interests are. There's all sorts of data in spare room that is not mined very well. But if you find out how to mine it and follow it over 3, 4, 5 months so you can sort of see the trends in your local area. I think there's also other ways in which you can also find out the demographics of your area. I can't remember what the site is called. Is it upmystreet.com or something like that? You can find out local demographics. And I think that's also really important that you plug that in when you're trying to identify your potential market.
Wonderful. Great stuff. Final question. What's the best property deal that you've done to date?
Oh, I've done some corking property deals. So my favourite property deal is where I buy a house using somebody else's money. So I haven't put any of my own money into it. And I create great cash flow. And I can add value and then take out all of their money so I can reuse it. And so it's a sort of double bubble where I haven't used my money to buy it. I haven't used my money to refurbish it. And I'm not using my money to keep it. And I've done that a number of times, Scott. I've done that with quite a lot of HMOs. I've done that with single buy-to-lets. I've bought flats like that. I bought a pub like that. My pub in Stoke-on-Trent, I bought like that. So there's probably not one specific deal. All of those are great deals. And you know what's really good is when your investor thanks you and where they don't want to be repaid because they're getting such a great return on their income, you know, on their investment, I suppose.
Yep.
And so they say, "Oh, don't give me my money back, Wendy. Put it into another project." That's always a great feeling because you know you've served them well and they're happy with what they're getting.
Absolutely.
So I mean, yeah, as I say, there's probably not one of those. I mean, perhaps I'll just quickly tell you about the pub. So the pub I bought. It came up for auction in a national auction. It was a pub in Stoke, and I couldn't go to the auction. So I just waited and I thought, I doubt if anyone's going to buy that pub. But it had a really, really strong lease on it, very good rental income, a full repairing and insuring lease, so I don't have to do any work on the pub. I bought it for £67,000.
Wow.
I put £6,000 deposit on my credit card, and a friend of mine paid the balance. She lent me the money, and I bought the pub with that money. We've now paid her back. Actually, she's had all the money back for that pub, and it's unencumbered. We own it wholly, and it's probably worth, I don't know, maybe double that now. I don't think it would have gone up hugely in value, but maybe it's worth 130, 140 now. And we make £1,200 a month on that deal.
Is that run as a HMO then, is it?
No, it's run as a pub. It's actually a pub. Yeah, so
wow.
I'm a landlady to a landlord.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, how's that?
Amazing.
Or is it the other way around? I never know. But anyway.
Either way, you've got ownership of a pub. Excellent.
Exactly. So I could go down there and have a drink. I think Derek, who is the landlord, would be very surprised if I walked in, because it's a real Stoke-on-Trent pub, Scott. It's one of those that you wipe your feet as you walk out of it.
True. Yeah. I get that.
You know the kind I mean.
Yeah. I'm not well experienced with that, but
one day I'll take you there. We'll go for a drink.
Sounds good. I'll take you up on that. 5 seconds, but we'll call it 3 minutes.
Great.
Super. Well, there's some great answers there, Wendy,
Thank
and
you.
hopefully some stuff that people can unpick, particularly from a HMO perspective.
Nice.
So I appreciate you coming on to the
No,
point
it's
today.
been great. Thank you very much. Thank you for having me. Really appreciate it.
Good stuff. So again, thanks for tuning in. Obviously, if you do like To The Point, comment, let us know, because we can do more when we've got obviously great guests like Wendy on. So we'll see you again on the next one. Take care. Goodbye.